Sorry about that for that little technical difficulty, but my Procaster disconnected on me. And again, this is a document called Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. It was written and produced by the Department of State in 1961. Office of Public Services, Bureau of Public Affairs. The introduction. The revolution and development of modern weapons within a world divided by serious ideological differences has produced a crisis in human history. In order to overcome the danger of nuclear war now confronting mankind, the United States has introduced at the 16th General Assembly of the United Nations a program for general and complete disarmament in a peaceful world. The new program provides for the progressive reduction of the war-making capabilities of nations and the simultaneous strengthening of international institutions to settle disputes and maintain the peace. It sets forth a series of comprehensive measures which can and should be taken in order to bring about a world in which there will be freedom from war and security for all states. It is based on three principles deemed essential to the achievement of practical progress in the disarmament field. First, there must be immediate disarmament action. A strenuous and uninterrupted effort must be made toward the goal of general and complete disarmament. At the same time, it is important that specific measures be put in effect as soon as possible. Second, all disarmament obligations must be subject to effective international controls. The control organization must have the manpower excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, and effectiveness to assure that limitations or reductions take place as agreed. Must also be able to certify to all states that retained forces and armaments do not exceed those permitted at any stage of the disarmament process. Third, adequate peacekeeping machinery must be established. And I'm not going to get all into everything in this document tonight again, but I want to get down to the points which I feel that must be discussed in light of what is happening in our nation today. One point I want to make here, ladies and gentlemen, is this. The elimination from national arsenals of all armaments, including all weapons of mass destruction and their means of delivery, other than those required for a United Nations peace force and for maintaining internal order. Ladies and gentlemen, when they're talking about the elimination of armaments, they are talking about the elimination of all armaments. They are talking about the elimination of the firearms of the American people. And if you do not believe this, once again I admonish you to do a search on the internet. As a matter of fact, I have this document uploaded to www.scribe.com. And again, the title of the document is Freedom from War. Moreover, it can be searched quite easily by typing in State Department Publication 7277. It's not only here that I have uploaded it on Scribe, but other people have uploaded it to other places as well. When the Vice President of the United States tells the American people that he has the power to act alone without the authority of the United States Congress, he has stated to the American people that the federal government is an outlaw regime. Plain and simple, ladies and gentlemen. They care not for the Constitution that they took an oath, swore an oath to uphold and protect. What they care about is an agenda. That agenda is the enslavement of the American people and the enslavement of all peoples on the face of this earth. If you do serious background checks into all these mass shootings that have occurred recently, you will find that these people have been on one form of psychotropic, antipsychotic drug or another. That is a fact, and you can find the links and the references on the internet. It is not spoken of in the quote-unquote mainstream media because they do not want the American people to know that these people suffer serious mental illnesses, and we already have laws in place to prevent people like these from buying weapons. And for those of you who have never bought a firearm, you do not know what you're talking about, because I am a weapon owner, and there are many people, millions of people in the United States that own firearms, and no matter if you go to a gun show or you go to a gun shop, you have to fill out the same forms that are turned into the Department of Treasury, and you have to answer the questions, and you have to present your ID, and then they will call the FBI, and through the instant check system that they have already in place, they will know instantly whether you have a criminal background or not. We have adequate safeguards in place in the United States to prevent the mentally ill, the criminals, and those in other categories from obtaining weapons. It is through the laxness and the apathy of the government that they are allowing criminals to run rampant all over our nation. If they do not want to enforce the laws they have now, what makes you think that they'll enforce laws that they pass in the future? They are not interested in enforcing the laws. They are interested in making up the rules as they go. Because the federal government knows who the criminals are. Excuse me. The federal government knows who's mentally ill. All of these people that have committed these mass shootings have had it documented in their backgrounds that they suffered personality disorders, or they've had run-ins with the law on previous occasions, that they have seen psychiatrists, that family members have warned others of their dangerous tendencies, and yet they're still allowed to roam around the streets and to murder innocent men, women, and children. As I've stated, the goal is not safety. The goal is not to reduce crime. The goal is to create a one-world socialist totalitarian government and place that control within the framework of the United Nations. There are a couple of very, very good books that you can read on this subject. One that I would suggest that people find is called En Route to Global Occupation, written by Gary H. Kah. Another is The Unseen Hand by A. Ralph Epperson. Another is The Architects of a Conspiracy by William P. Hoare. None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. And the list goes on and on and on and on, ladies and gentlemen. I possess hundreds of books in my home library. Literally hundreds of books dealing with international politics, global politics, American history, European history, world history in general. that deal with the things that we deal with today. And they all come to the same conclusion. If there is no conspiracy to create a world government, then why do all these independent researchers from all over the world who have never met one another, who have written books throughout the decades, all come to the same conclusion? Because they dig deep in governmental records. They dig deep in intelligence files. They dig deep in books and references that are centuries old. The goal to create a world government is a centuries-old plan. Not only did George Herbert Walker Bush talk about it in 1991, Adolf Hitler talked about it. He actually wrote a book entitled The New World Order. H.G. Wells, the famous sci-fi author, also wrote a book entitled The New World Order, which I am fortunate enough to have obtained a copy in original printing, and I have that in my home library. And if you do not believe it exists, it does exist. He also wrote another book entitled The Open Conspiracy. You see, H.G. Wells was a member of the British Fabian Society. He was a socialist. He believed in the concept of world government, and it was his writings in the early part of the 20th century that influenced the people that were alive then. Going further back into history, Napoleon Bonaparte talked about a new world order. Do you know that many famous politicians have talked about it? Woodrow Wilson talked about the secret power behind the scenes, and after he signed the Income Tax Act and the Federal Reserve Act, he admitted that he signed the ruination of the United States of America. Paul Warburg, a German banker from Warburg and Sons, testified before the United States Senate, and he said, "We shall have world government whether we like it or not. The question is whether it will be by consent or conquest." These people know exactly what they're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. They make no secret of their goals. An essential goal in order for the New World Order to succeed is complete disarmament. And the documents that I have are a furtherance to those ends. It is the stated policy of the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives to disband our armed forces, to disarm the American people, and place what is left into the control of the United Nations. That is a fact. And it's easy to find out this information. What you need to do, excuse me, is you need to throw your television set away. You need to get rid of your television set. You need to stop watching television, because they are propaganda masters. They will never tell you the truth. They will tell you the story that they are fed, and they will regurgitate it for you over the airwaves. In order to find the truth, you must seek alternate sources of information. And one is reading books, ladies and gentlemen, because the sum total of man's knowledge is written down in books from time immemorial. Reading, like many things that our forefathers did in great abundance, seems to be a dying pastime. There needs to be a revival and interest in reading books. It's an activity that everybody should do. We are so immersed in the 30-second sound bites, the gaming systems, the 500-channel cable TV packages that you can buy today, that not only the American people, but the people of the world are losing their ability to think. They're losing their grasp of history. They're forgetting why the United States was founded, under which principles it was founded, what it took to found this nation, the sacrifices that were made, and what sacrifices will need to be made in the future to restore our republic. For those of you that have never taken a look at the history of the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire, ladies and gentlemen, was mightier than the United States. They controlled almost 100% of the known world at the peak and zenith of their power. They were originally a republic. By the time of the demise of the Roman Empire, they had degenerated into a democracy. A republic is a government that is ruled by law. A democracy is a government that is ruled by the majority. Our founding fathers were masters of history, science, philosophy, politics, education, religion, and they understood this quite well. It took them years to devise the most near perfect form of government that was ever devised by the minds of man. They feared and they hated democracy. I challenge any of you that are listening tonight to pick up a copy of the United States Constitution and show me anywhere in that document where our founding fathers mentioned the word democracy. You shall not find it anywhere in that document, ladies and gentlemen, because they knew exactly what a democracy was. It was ruled by the mob, and that is one thing, excuse me again, ladies and gentlemen, that is one thing that our founding fathers despised and detested. Just because people are murdered does not give others the right to deny other people their rights. There are more people killed in the United States yearly by fists and hammers and by going to the doctor than are killed by firearms, and that is a fact. And those facts are easily found on the internet. Because if you wish, those of you, to deny me my rights or the rights of my countrymen, their right to bear arms, then you have no right or authority to claim any other right that is stated in the Constitution. That is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. If you do not like our form of government, which is supposed to be a constitutional republic ruled by law, which protects the rights of not only the majority but the minority, then move away. Move to Canada. Move to Great Britain. If you think that things are so fine and peaceful in those nations. I was listening and reading a few articles today about the debate with Piers Morgan, who called the Bible and the Constitution seriously flawed. He has no facts which to back up his claims, and when challenged and presented the facts of the true nature of the crime rate in Great Britain, he chooses to look the other way because he has no facts. He's acting out of emotion. He's trying to inflame the American people. He's trying to deceive the American people into thinking that banning firearms will make us safer. And nothing can be further from the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing can be further from the truth. Look at the nation of Mexico. They have some very strict gun laws. There were over 60,000 murders in the nation of Mexico in 2012 alone. The Mexican drug cartels are running rampant with automatic firearms. and the peaceful law-abiding citizens of Mexico are their prey. What makes you think that it will be any different here in America, ladies and gentlemen? Criminals will always find a way to obtain weapons. They always have and they always will, whether it was single-shot muskets in the days of our forefathers or AR-15s today. There are those that say, well, the Constitution was written when we had single-shot muskets. Our founding fathers did not give us the right to keep and bear single-shot muskets, ladies and gentlemen. They gave us the right to keep and bear arms. Whether it was the single-shot musket of 1776 or the AR-15 of 2013. They knew full well that technology would advance. And that is why they framed the Second Amendment the way they framed it. And I want to revisit something in the Second Amendment, the security of a free state. When they were talking about that, ladies and gentlemen, they did not mean the state of California or Wisconsin or Oklahoma or Texas. What they meant was a state of being. Freedom cannot exist unless the American people retain their arms. And if we are forced to give up our firearms, that state of being, the security of a free state, shall cease to exist. And again, I say to the American people that Vice President Joe Biden, Senator Dianne Feinstein, President Obama, and others who wish to act out of the confines of the Constitution are acting out of the confines of the law, and they are lawless. And if they can succeed in disarming the American people, they will succeed, I guarantee you, in destroying your right to free speech, your right to religion, or lack thereof. They will destroy every right contained in the Bill of Rights. And if you think that Nazi Germany was bad, ladies and gentlemen, you wait until what they will be able to create here with the advances in the technology that we have. Adolf Hitler said, the surest way to conquer a nation is to disarm its people. It's not very hard to understand, ladies and gentlemen. Go back through history. Throw your television set away and start reading. Start understanding why politicians seek to disarm their citizens. It has nothing and has never had anything to do with crime, ever. And because we're Americans, that does not make us special. There are those who will say that, well, this is America. Nothing bad can ever happen here. The Germans said the same thing in Germany. I had an interesting discussion with a former quote-unquote friend on Facebook the other day. And she said, we were getting into a debate about the guns, the Second Amendment, and President Obama. And she said, I have nothing to fear about my president. I love my president. And I said, yes. And the Germans, they so loved Adolf Hitler. And 12 years later, they were picking up the pieces of a destroyed nation. Because they believed his lies. And they believed his deceptions. The Russians so loved Joseph Stalin too. They loved him so much that in his appreciation, he created the vast, and expanded on the Gulag system and sent many millions of his countrymen into slave labor camps. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a figure for you. 250,000 communists controlled 250 million people in the nation of Russia. And why was that, ladies and gentlemen? Because the communists were the only ones that had the arms. You see, these people in the Congress that wish to deny you your rights to have firearms, they actually love weapons. I posted on Facebook about a week ago a picture of Charles Schumer, Senator Charles Schumer of New York. He's one of the most rabidly anti-Second Amendment senators perhaps in United States history. But here he is on a firing range shooting a Tech-9 semi-automatic submachine gun, and he had a giant grin on his face when he was doing it. Senator Dianne Feinstein was one of the very few people in the city of San Francisco that had a concealed weapons permit to carry a handgun. President Obama signed a law a couple of days ago that gives him armed protection for life. Isn't it pretty hypocritical that these people want all the protection in the world paid for by the courtesy of the American taxpayers, but yet on another hand they wish to leave those that are paying them weak, defenseless, and helpless? When are you going to wake up, America? When are you going to start using the brains that God gave you? As I said before, you need to throw away your TV set because it's rotting your mind out and it's destroying your ability to reason and to think. Senator Ted Kennedy, the former senator, now deceased, his bodyguards were arrested in the mid-1980s for carrying unregistered, unpermitted, fully automatic weapons, ladies and gentlemen. And yet, every session of Congress, he did his utmost to disarm the people of the United States. That is a fact. It's a fact that cannot be denied. And if you don't believe it, Google it. Google the article. His bodyguards were arrested for carrying fully automatic weapons. Rosie O'Donnell, the actress and talk show host, has armed bodyguards, and yet she's rabidly anti-Second Amendment. Whoopi Goldberg has a 12-gauge shotgun in her house, proudly displayed it on a talk show, and she's rabidly anti-Second Amendment. And asked why she had that shotgun in her house, she said she has to protect herself. Then why do they want to deny that same protection to their fellow countrymen, ladies and gentlemen? Because the issue is control. The issue is tyranny. The issue is the destruction of freedom. And most of these people that are going along with the anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment crusade are going to be the first in the labor camps. They will be the first slated for elimination and execution. Because the willing dupes are always the first to go, America. Always. Because they will be the first ones crying and screaming for protection once these psychotic thugs get their way. Is it starting to sink in, America? Many of the same things that are happening here happened in Australia. They had the school shootings. And finally, in Australia, they passed the National Firearms Act and forced the people of Australia to turn in over 680-some thousand firearms. But what our media here in America refuses to report, that property crime and physical crimes against the people of Australia have risen some 40 to 45%. There is always a correlation with disarmament and crime. Always. If you have no means to protect yourself, you have no deterrent from stopping anybody from entering your home and doing their bidding with you. The same thing happened excuse me, in Great Britain. Only the British were more stealthy. They practiced communism to a T. The doctrine of patient gradualism. First they started out with the National Pistol Act in Britain. They forced everybody to register their handguns. And then they forced everybody to register their rifles and their shotguns. And once they were all registered, ladies and gentlemen, they were able to know who owned firearms, and they simply passed a law banning them all. And they will do that here too, ladies and gentlemen, because President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden are calling for the creation of a national database of firearms owners. And once they know exactly who owns firearms, the next step will be their outright ban. And in reality, they already know who owns the firearm, because if you buy a weapon in a gun store or at a gun show, you must fill out the same treasury form. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Control claims that they destroy the forms, but I don't believe that, because they have been caught on numerous occasions building databases in contravention of the directives of the United States Congress. I believe those databases exist. Here in Wisconsin, my home state, they became the 49th state to pass a concealed weapons law. And everybody here was quite happy about that. I was not happy about it, ladies and gentlemen, for one reason and one reason only. Something that people who claim to believe in freedom always miss. They created a database here in the state of Wisconsin of concealed permit holders. So the police know if you have a permit that you have a handgun. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America makes it quite clear that we have a right to keep and bear arms. And permitting somebody to carry a weapon is not upholding and respecting your rights. It's legislating a privilege, is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. And they will be able to use that information at some point in the future to identify and confiscate all handguns owned by the people in the state of Wisconsin, and they will be able to do the same thing in every other state in the Union, because they have the databases as well. The Constitution of the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, is the supreme law of this land. The Supreme Court has ruled in D.C. versus Heller that the right to bear arms is an individual right. I am wondering what President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden don't understand about that. They were both lawyers. Either they are going to respect the law or they're going to be lawless. There is no in between, ladies and gentlemen. There is no in between. I was reading the other day that there's going to be a 1 million man march, 1 million gun owner march, and have a rally 2 days before President Obama's inauguration in the upcoming weeks. I'm telling those of you that are interested in attending that to stay away from it. Do not attend that rally, because they will use that as an excuse, and they will send agents into that rally to try to agitate people, and they will try to cause an incident. They will send agent provocateurs, which they always do, to try to stir the hornet's nest, because they know that there are a vast majority of the American people that own firearms are wise to their plans. And many people that don't own firearms, ladies and gentlemen, are beginning to see right through the facade and the lies and the deceptions of the federal government. I talk to many people on the internet all over the United States, from Oregon to Florida to Maine, and a great many of those that tell me that they have quote-unquote woke up since 9/11. That was their wake-up call. It was the American Reichstag, ladies and gentlemen. What did Adolf Hitler do when he didn't get the power that he desired from the German parliament and the German people? He burned the Reichstag to the ground, and he blamed his political opponents. And then he went to the German people and he told them, "Give me the power and I will make Germany safe and secure." And they gave him the power, didn't they? And what did he do with it, ladies and gentlemen? He turned Germany into one of the most evil dictatorships that has ever existed in the history of mankind. Look at some of the newsreels when Adolf Hitler was speaking, and look at the people that were listening to him speak. And look at some of the speeches President Obama gives, and look at the facial expressions of the American people when they're listening to him. They almost mirror one another exactly. I've talked to Obama supporters. They all say the same thing about him, that he's able to grab and capture their imaginations the same way that Adolf Hitler did. He is a dangerous man, and it's sad to say that about a president of the United States. But he intends, not only with the issue of the Second Amendment, but everything concerning our Constitution, to act outside the confines and the chains of that document. If he does not get his way on every issue that he pushes and proposes, he intends to bypass the Congress with executive orders. And nowhere in the United States Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, does it give President Obama or President Washington the authority to write law. It is not in there. Pick up a Constitution. Share it with your neighbors and your friends and your family. Start reading it. Start caring about your nation. A dictatorship is being established, slowly but surely. And it did not start with Barack Obama, contrary to what some people think. These plans have been laid in place many decades ago, and Barack Obama is just another puppet on a string, as all presidents are. They have no real power and real authority. They do as they're told. They either do as they're told, or they're allowed one term in office, or like President Kennedy and President McKinley, President Lincoln, they're assassinated. These plans are centuries old, even before the inception of the United States. It's been the dream and the goal of certain groups of people in the world to unite mankind under one government. And as I said in a previous broadcast, a world government would be fine if it was based on the Constitution of the United States, and it gave all men and women and children on the face of this earth their freedoms as guaranteed by God. But unfortunately, that's not their plans. Their plan is to create a socialist world government with a dictatorship. Excuse me again, ladies and gentlemen. Their plan is to create a dictatorship. Another book that you should read, and I mentioned it again in a previous broadcast, is The Fearful Master, A Second Look at the United Nations. In the 1960s, there was a republic called Katanga in Africa. And the leader of that nation wanted to create a republic based upon the Constitution of the United States, with all the freedoms and liberties that we have here, with a system of monetary exchange based upon gold and silver coin. And what happened? The United Nations destroyed Katanga because they cannot have another nation take foothold with a constitutional republic as its form of government. In the United States, supposedly the free leader of the leader of the free world, put all our resources to bear in the aiding and the abetting in the destruction of Katanga Republic, ladies and gentlemen. Don't believe it? It's well documented. While you're at it, get another book, United Nations Conspiracy, and you will find that every leader, Secretary General of the United Nations, has either been a member of the Communist Party or the Socialist Party in whatever nation that they came from. Alger Hiss, as I have stated before, an author of the United Nations Charter, was convicted as a communist spy right here in the United States. He was a good friend of President Harry S. Truman, who authored State Department Publication 3972, and I have that uploaded unscribed as well, and I also have that uploaded on www.worldtruth.org, and I encourage people to join that site. I don't believe that there is any social site or network on the internet that isn't watched or has an agent within its ranks, but there are many good freedom-minded people there, and you're free to choose who you want to be friends with, and you're free to choose what information you wish to share. And I'm linked here with this broadcast on live stream through www.truthbroadcastnetwork.com. And I wish to thank founder Harry Link for having me on his network, because we are doing our best, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me once again. I'm sorry, I do have the flu. We are doing our best, ladies and gentlemen, to not only awaken the American people, but to awaken the world to the dangers that we're in. If the United States goes down, the world will go down into darkness, and that is a fact. For those of you that do own firearms, which there are many millions of you, I urge calm, and I urge the utmost restraint. They are waiting for an incident to happen. Either they will create that incident or they will create the conditions where that incident will happen. And if you advocate violence or advocate the overthrow of the United States government, either A, you are a government agent, or B, you are crazy. I do not advocate violence. I do not advocate harm to come to the president or the vice president. If they act out of the confines of the United States Constitution, then it is the duty and the responsibility of the Congress of the United States of America to remove President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden from office. And they have that authority under the United States Constitution. And for those congressmen and senators who wish to act out of the confines of the Constitution, it is the duty of those remaining members to remove those people from their offices. As a hero and mentor, the man that woke me up in 1992 stated quite clearly, he who fires the first shots loses. And they always have, ladies and gentlemen. In no way do I wish to see the American people weakened or unprepared. For those of you that have not armed yourselves, I admonish you to do so while you can. And for those who are armed, use your skills to teach your friends, your family, or your neighbors, those that may be interested in a firearm, to pass your skills off to them. Because I believe that there are a great many more American people who wish to purchase firearms than there are those that seek to have them banned. 10 years ago there were 70 million gun owners. Today, the latest statistics that I have read, that there are over 100 million gun owners and some 300 million weapons in the possession of the American people, and that number is growing daily. And that is a good thing, because arms in the hands of moral and law-abiding and peace-loving people always create security within the nation. The right to bear arms has nothing to do with hunting. It has nothing to do with even protecting your property, although those are both legitimate uses and legitimate functions. The right to bear arms, ladies and gentlemen, was given to us as a last resort, as a check and balance to tyranny in government. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, said, "The liberty tree must be watered from time to time with the blood of tyrants." And what he was saying is that I believe that if there are those people that wish to enslave us, he was perfectly fine with shedding their blood. And as I've said before, these were not angry, white, rich slave owners that as the people are trying to portray them today. They were masters of politics. They were masters of history. They fled a nation that oppressed them. They fled a nation that overtaxed them. They fled a nation that sought to restrict their religious practices. And I want to say right now, ladies and gentlemen, if you believe that America is a Christian nation or was founded on Christian principles, you are dead wrong. They gave the American people freedom of religion They gave the American people the right to practice whichever religion they chose to practice, because freedom is a right to act in a moral and responsible way. A Satanist has a perfect right to practice their religion as long as they do not infringe upon the rights of another. If they seek to harm a Christian, or seek to harm a Jew, or seek to harm a Muslim, or vice versa in any way, shape, or form, then we have laws in place that deal with that. The Constitution makes it quite clear that a crime is an attempt to deny people their right to life, their liberty, or their property. Our founding fathers were not Christians. They were Freemasons, all of them. And that is a well-documented fact. They understood human nature. As I said, they were masters of philosophy. They gave us our chance. They created a republic. As a reporter of the day asked Benjamin Franklin, "What have you wrought?" And his reply was, "A republic if you can keep it." They knew that the American people, at some point in their history, would willingly turn in their freedom for benefit or what they perceived to be as security. They knew this. Benjamin Franklin said it quite clearly. People who sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither. And that is the situation that we are facing today. People who will sacrifice their liberty, who believe that outlawing firearms will bring them security, are living in a fantasy world. They have not their heads screwed on straight, ladies and gentlemen. Their thinking is seriously flawed. And not because I say it. It's because history has borne that fact out time and time again. Have you ever seen the pictures of the mass executions in Russia, the Soviet Union, China, Germany? All those people were left defenseless because the first thing these communists did was disarm them. The second thing they did is they murdered them. And I submit to you, America, that it will happen here. Because they have already identified people who they deem as terrorists here in the United States. It is those people who believe in the Constitution, gun ownership, the Bible, individual freedoms, property rights, as being terrorists. And I said this to my friends 20 years ago before I even had a net broadcast, even before I had the internet, and I was laughed at. I told my friends, ladies and gentlemen, that someday the American gun owner would be branded a terrorist. And that is exactly what they are doing. Do you remember Saddam Hussein? Everybody remembers Saddam Hussein, don't they? Do you remember about 90 to 95% of the time they showed him on television in individual news clips that either A, he was shooting a pistol in the streets, or he was on the firing range with his sons and his grandsons, because they are trying to propagandize the American people into believing that gun ownership equates to being a dictator and being a terrorist. Imagery to these people is all important, ladies and gentlemen, and they're masters of propaganda. And I guarantee you that if they are allowed to progress, if they are allowed to progress, the American gun owner will be demonized and victimized in the eyes of America. And it's happening. Those people that cry gun control are on Twitter advocating the murder of NRA President Wayne LaPierre and conspiracy talk show host Alex Jones. What makes these people who describe themselves as being liberal any better than these psychotic nutcases running around shooting school children? Their philosophy and their way of thinking is so sick and twisted, it makes me sick to my stomach. They're hypocrites. They have always been hypocrites. Their philosophy is a hypocritical philosophy. It is a flawed philosophy, ladies and gentlemen. It is a philosophy that has never worked for mankind because they are lawless. And as I said, a republic is ruled by law. These people seek to destroy that. They wish to operate out of the confines of the law and make up the rules as they go. They wish to rule as they see fit. And they will be worse than any dictator that previously existed. A republic, as I said, is ruled by law. Democracy, which the American people believe we have, can be defined quite simply. Think of democracy as a lynch mob. Think of an Old West scenario, and this is paraphrasing some words out of a book from the Unseen Hand, authored by A. Ralph Epperson. Think of the scenario in the Old West. A man rides into the western town, he robs the bank, and he shoots a poor defenseless woman. The sheriff arrests him and puts him in jail. And at night, the townfolk come with rope and torches in hand, and they wish to break into the jail, and they wish to hang the robber and the murderer. In a democracy, that would be quite acceptable, ladies and gentlemen. In a republic, it is not. In a republic, whether or not you commit the smallest insignificant crime, such as stealing a pack of gum from the store, or you murder 30 people, the law must be used, and you are innocent until proven guilty. In a democracy, the mob can do as it wishes. And that is what is happening today, ladies and gentlemen, with the debate on gun control. The mob, the majority, who they perceive themselves as being the majority, wishes to do as they see fit. And if they are allowed to do this, there will be nothing stopping them from doing anything that they want. Because we are human beings when you come right down to it. Whether or not we have the term American in front of us or not, it makes no difference. Because people living in this nation are as easily corruptible as people living in any other nation on the face of this earth. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. No matter if it's in the United States or Russia or Britain or France or Australia. Excuse me again, ladies and gentlemen. And our founding fathers, as I said, knew this. We cannot allow the destruction of our Constitution. The root word of constitution is constitute. It makes us who we are as a nation and as a people. The only document that has ever come close to guaranteeing the freedoms of man was the Magna Carta. And besides the Magna Carta, the United States Constitution is the only document that has ever existed in mankind which set men free. Because as a hero, my hero and mentor has said, which I want to relay to you, that throughout the history of mankind prior to the inception of the United States, man was always owned by the baron, the landowner, the church, or the king or the queen. We are not progressing in history, ladies and gentlemen. We are regressing into history. Instead of becoming more free, we're wrapping a ball and chain around our feet and we're putting a noose around our necks. And my broadcast seeks to educate the American people in a calm and rational manner. Those of you that are new listeners, pick up a copy of your Constitution and start sharing it with your friends and your families. It's not hard to gather 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people together and to have a rational discussion outside the influences of the media or the influences of the politicians. I have no agenda, ladies and gentlemen, other than freedom and truth. These people have an alternate agenda and they hide behind it. They seek to destroy the United States. And they will inflame any issue they can in the furtherance of their goals. I happen to believe that they will make a wholehearted push to disarm the American people no matter what anybody says. I happen to believe, well anyway, let me backtrack a little bit. Some of the people that I talk to on the internet have asked me my opinions about the police and the military. They've asked me questions to the effect that, do you believe that the majority of the police and the military will aid and do whatever the government says? My answer to that is yes, I believe that. For the simple fact of the matter is that a soldier takes an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And if they understood what that oath meant, there wouldn't be a war in Iran, or excuse me, there wouldn't have been wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if a police officer actually believed in the United States Constitution, they would not be able to pull you over for speeding. Because speeding is not a crime under the Constitution. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, I happen to believe that a majority of the police in this nation, and I happen to believe that the military, will do as they're ordered. Because they do not think. Now don't get me wrong. I believe that there are a lot of officers and a lot of military that will not go along with this. But then whose side are they going to be on? Is the military going to fight the military? Is the police going to fight the police? I happen to believe that they will, in time, succeed in weeding out all those with patriotic tendencies out of every police force in the United States, and I happen to believe that they will weed out those that have patriotic tendencies in the United States military, and that those two organizations will be left with a collection of immoral thugs, is what I believe. Because immoral thugs don't care what they do as long as they're getting paid. What was the Nazi Party, ladies and gentlemen? They were a collection of immoral thugs. Adolf Hitler didn't let anybody into the military that didn't swear a total oath to him and the Nazi philosophy. They didn't let anybody in the German police that didn't swear an oath to totally support Der Fuhrer and the Nazi philosophy. And what was left of the German military was an indoctrinated, brainwashed collection of thugs. And the same thing happened with the German police force. And the same thing will happen here in the United States of America. Give them time. There was an article on the internet the other day that the county sheriff in a county sheriff in the state of Kentucky stated that he will not enforce unconstitutional gun laws. I submit to you that they'll simply remove him from office, because what power does a county sheriff have against the federal government? How will, ladies and gentlemen, in a logical way, if the government plans on disarming the American people, will they be able to enforce it? If they truly seek to disarm the American people, there is only one alternative they will use. Either they will use the United Nations military, the United States military to do it, or they will create the conditions necessary per the terms of the United Nations Charter, where they are able to bring in foreign troops to do the job that the American military may refuse to do. And I submit to you that both of those scenarios are viable, because under the United Nations Charter, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States can request foreign assistance from foreign armies anytime he sees fit. And that is unknown to the American people, because they've never read the United Nations Charter, they've never read the United States Constitution, they have never reconciled the two documents against each other. They pay attention to your stupid football games and your sports and your distractions. And the Roman people paid attention to the same garbage, and look what happened to them. They will disarm the American people, and they will use every means necessary, including total violence, in order to achieve their objectives. Somebody told me, and I'm not going to mention their name, but they believe that they'll use mass drugging in order to achieve their goals. Maybe they will, but I happen to believe, which I have documented, that they must disarm this nation in order to achieve their new world order. They must do it. They must do it, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I would say that you should revisit another document that I talked about. It's entitled, and I mentioned it before, State Department Publication 3972. All of these documents written by presidents and senators and secretaries of state all state the same thing. They have to disarm, 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 and if I have to do 100 broadcasts on this to get it through your heads, I will do so. Maybe it's just in my blood, America, I don't know. I grew up with firearms. I received my first weapon when I was 6 years old. Received my second weapon when I was 9. My third when I was 12 years old, because by that age I was able to legally deer hunt. But I remember one thing that my father told me quite clearly when he gave me my first weapon at age 6. He said, "Son, I'm giving you this," and he said, "let no man take it from you." He said, "Never turn your firearms in ever to the government." My family, on my father's side, came from Finland. My relatives fought against the Soviets in the invasion and winter war of 1939. And they beat armor and aircraft with reindeer and skis, ladies and gentlemen. And why did they beat them? Because they had an undenying, unfettered, unwavering determination to preserve their way of life. My aunt and my uncle, they visited there about excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. My aunt and my uncle, they visited there about 11 years ago. And they met, I believe it was a cousin of mine. And they got into a discussion about hunting. And my relative asked my uncle how many people in Wisconsin go deer hunting. And he said about 750,000 people go hunting. And you know what my cousin said? He looked my uncle straight in the eye and he says, "That's a sizable army." You see, those people never forgot the sacrifices that they had to make in order to maintain their way of life. The American people have forgotten the sacrifices of many generations that have fought and died to preserve the things that you enjoy every day. And that is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Do you remember in Tiananmen Square in 1988? A lone Chinese lady through very great courage and bravery stood up to a column of tanks. When are the American people going to stand up? And that very same Chinese lady told the American people to never give your guns away. How many people that are fighting for freedom in other nations have warned the American people to never turn your firearms in? I was reading an excellent article the other day from a Russian blogger, and he knew what he was talking about. The Russians were the most heavily armed people on the face of this earth at one time, ladies and gentlemen. They were more heavily armed than the American people. And according to his article, people carried their pistols and their rifles and their shotguns, and they even carried their pitchforks around, and it was a common everyday occurrence, and everybody thought that and everybody knew that it was normal, that it was a part of the Russian way of life, when they actually lived in freedom under the Tsar. You see, you've been led to believe a lie all your life, that the Tsar was a brutal, mean dictator, and nothing could be further from the truth. Get the book The Unseen Hand and read the true story about the Tsars of Russia. It wasn't until the Bolsheviks took power in Russia, the very first thing they did is they disarmed the Russian people. As I stated, 250,000 communists controlled 250 million people, ladies and gentlemen. In Germany, there was German soldiers leading Jewish people off to the cattle cars, and they had broken rifles because the Jews and everybody else in Germany were so propagandized and so terrorized that they believed that they had no possibility ever of fighting back. And they were led to their demise. How could 6 million Jewish people be wrong, ladies and gentlemen? The first step is always registration, which President Obama wants. And the second step will be confiscation. Do you want to leave your wife and your children helpless? Do you want to leave your republic helpless? This is your nation. This is not President Obama's nation. This is not Joe Biden's nation. This is not the nation of 435 members of Congress. This is our nation. This is our home. We were born here. We didn't choose where we were going to be born, ladies and gentlemen, but we can choose whether or not we want to be free. And the government didn't give us that choice. God gave us that choice. And I will make my choice, and I will state it quite clearly in this broadcast. I, Jeffrey Whittla, being a free citizen of the United States of America, shall not comply with any unconstitutional gun law, and I will not comply ever if there is an attempt to confiscate my firearms and deny my rights as guaranteed in the United States Constitution as given by God the Creator. I state that unequivocally, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. I will not allow my nation to be destroyed by lawless thugs. And I admonish the American people, those of you that believe in freedom and security and peace, to join me in this struggle and to join many others in this struggle to bring the truth to the American people. To educate your parents and your grandparents, your family and your friends, your neighbors, and educate your enemies. And I suggest those of you, again, if you are not armed, to arm yourself immediately. And I suggest 3 weapons that you should obtain. One is a rifle in the Kalashnikov family of rifles, the SKS, or the AK-47. It's 7.62 by 39 caliber. The ammunition is fairly cheap and is still readily available. I believe that they function better than American military weapons. You should purchase a shotgun, a 12-gauge shotgun, pump action, 8 shots, Winchester Defender model, synthetic stock, a 40 caliber handgun, either made by Glock, Beretta, or Taurus. A Beretta is a little pricey, so is a Glock. A Taurus is reasonably priced. Synthetic stock if you can get it. And I believe that you must purchase 1,000 rounds of ammunition for each one of these weapons. And you should purchase another rifle chambered in a military round, a .308, a 30-06, or if you prefer to go with .223, you can get an AR-15 if you can still find one, because I've been told that they're almost non-existent in gun store shelves these days, because they seem to be a popular weapon that everybody's purchasing. But do this now while you still can, and do not procrastinate. For those of you that can't afford all 3 weapons, I suggest that you buy an SKS out of the list. It's a moderately priced rifle, around $300, and 1,000 rounds of ammunition will run you about $280. So you're talking around a $580 investment. According to Congress, they codified into law what a militia was. It was that they provided for an inactive and an active militia. The inactive militia is all able-bodied males between the ages of 17 and 64 years of age. For those of you that believe in gun control, why do you believe in breaking the law? Because the Congress codified into law what a militia is. They actually require you, America, if you're an able-bodied male between the ages of 17 and 64, to own a firearm. But the creeps that run our media, the liars and the deceivers, will never tell you that. And not 1 in 10,000 Americans ever look at the laws that Congress passes, whether they be good laws or bad laws. The American people do not look at the law. They like to pride themselves on being quote-unquote informed of the issues that are important to them. The American people are some of the most uninformed people on the face of this earth, and that's a fact. I had a lady, the same one that I got into the debate about guns and the Second Amendment, and I asked her a point-blank question. Have you ever looked at the congressional record? Have you ever looked at federal laws? Have you ever looked at a treaty? Have you ever looked at policy statements or statements from the Senate and the House concerning what I post? And her answer was no. Then I asked her, then who are you to tell me my information is wrong? She said, well, I get my information from my daily readings of the newspaper. And I had to laugh, ladies and gentlemen, because you will never get the truth from a newspaper. Ever. They are controlled by the same people that wish to form a world government. The 13 banking families that seek to establish a world government and a world monetary system are the same families that own the media outlets on every nation on the face of this earth. And yes, for you conservatives, Fox News is owned by the same people too. If Sean Hannity ever told the truth, or Bill O'Reilly ever told the truth on network television, they would be a dim memory in the space of a year. Their broadcasts would be canceled, and they would be out of sight and out of your mind. They don't tell the truth. They're fed lines, and they regurgitate them for you. Rush Limbaugh doesn't tell the truth. He ridicules people that quote-unquote believe in conspiracies. He said himself there is no conspiracy. I guess he's right in one aspect. There is no conspiracy because it's always been out in the open. But Rush Limbaugh himself said that he's merely an entertainer, and that if he could make more money towing the liberals' philosophy and politics, he would do so in a heartbeat. And you can read that in his book, The Way Things Ought to Be. It's right in there. But yet, millions and millions of Americans listen to these people and they take their words as gospel. You need to start learning things on your own. You need to start reading and digging for the truth on your own. And I'll say this again, you don't have to believe anything I say. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to do the work for yourself. As my hero and mentor told me a long time ago, confirm it with your own research, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm doing my best to help you along the way. That's why I've uploaded many documents to Scribd, www.scribd.com. You can friend me on Facebook, Jeffrey Whittla, and I will put you in my Facebook group, and I will show you the file, and you will have access to the files that I have uploaded. Check out www.truthbroadcastnetwork.com. There are other broadcasters there besides me, trying to bring the message of truth to the people of the world. And there are other patriotic sites that you can join. But I believe that those of like mind, those that are aware and awake, must do their best to reach out to those that are skeptical, those that are on the fence, and those that are completely asleep. Because it does no good to have like-minded people rehashing the same information over and over and over again. We know what's going on and what the agenda is. The mission should be to awaken those that are closest to you first, meaning your spouse, your children if they're old enough to understand, your other family members, and your friends. Each one of us acting independently, doing the best that we can, is the only way that we are going to expose these people for who they really are. Joining social networks is fine and dandy, and I like it myself. I'm on 7 or 8 of them. But I'm not accomplishing much by sharing information with like-minded people. I have told all of those people that I make friends with that it should be your duty and your priority to take the information that I upload to these sites and that I've uploaded to Scribd, to download this information and start recreating it. Your computer is one neat, fast, little copying machine. There's nothing that you can't recreate with your computer. A package of CD-ROM discs does not cost a lot of money. And you can multitask when you're on the computer. You can burn your data files when you're surfing the net, or you're chatting on Facebook, or you're surfing some other website. You can begin to recreate this information, and you can start to share it with your family and your friends. Not everybody has a computer. Not everybody goes on the internet, despite the fact that probably everybody believes that happens today, but a great many people don't. And the internet, I believe, much to the chagrin of those that seek to establish a new world order, I don't think that they fathomed or realized the depths that people would go to make this information available. That is why I upload things that I find that are truthful, that are documented in original form, to be recreated. As I said, www.scribd.com. My ID is Silver Sabelf. One word. You can search my ID there. Join www.worldtruth.org. You can friend me. Same name there. www.facebook.com. Jeffrey Whittla. Jeff Whittla. Same name there. And you can have access to the truth, to all the information that I possess. But you must use your abilities to download this information, burn it to CD-ROMs, recreate this information, and start disseminating it amongst your friends and your families. That is the only way that we can reach out to people besides the internet. Not only that, when you recreate this information, you're helping to safeguard it for future generations. And that is what needs to be done also, ladies and gentlemen. The primary mission of broadcasters like myself is not to reach out to like-minded people. My goal is to reach people that are skeptical and to people that are completely unaware of what's going on. And for those of you that may have just joined this broadcast, that there is a plan to create a new world order, a one-world socialist totalitarian government. And disarmament is key to achieving that objective. These school shootings and these mass murderers, I believe, will accelerate. They'll be a common everyday occurrence until they achieve their goals, till they so anger and inflame the American people into demanding total gun confiscation. And they will make themselves look like the good guys, and in reality they are creating the shooters through programs such as MKUltra, and that's well documented. Research MKUltra, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't believe they can create a programmed assassin and then have that assassin kill themselves so you don't know the truth, think again, because they've done it in the past. And nothing will stop these people because they are evil. They are immoral. They have no guiding principles. Their goal is one thing and one thing only, and it matters not how long it takes to achieve it. Their goal is to be able to control you from the time you are born till the time you die. What you watch, what you eat, where you live, what vehicle you own, your income, your health care, your thoughts. They seek to control every aspect of your life. And they will do this, ladies and gentlemen, unless broadcasters like myself and many others can awaken you to the dangers that we're in. And as I said, start being proactive with your family and your friends. The worst thing that they can do is call you nuts or call you crazy. I've been called that myself. But I'm wondering how many people that have called me nuts and called me crazy are not having second thoughts now, 20 years later. If you think things are good in America, go to the grocery store. Are you liking the prices of groceries? How do you like paying $60,000 for a brand new vehicle? They're going to collapse the economy, and I believe that they will use a double-edged sword. As I stated to a friend of mine the other day, I believe first they will collapse the economy because hungry stomachs are obedient stomachs. And then I believe they will pass the gun laws immediately afterwards. Because a man who has a hungry wife and hungry children will do pretty much what he's told. That is why you need to not only buy firearms, you need to buy a year's supply of food at least, while you still can, for your families. You need to buy medical equipment and a means to purify water. And for those of you listening, if you live in a metro area and you can afford to leave and move to a rural area of the nation, I advise you to do so while you still can. Because they will seal up the cities first, and they will turn them into death traps. And for those of that are able to escape, They'd be like hordes of army ants devouring everything in their paths. So the remoter area of the United States that you're in, I believe the better off you're going to be. As I said, you need medical equipment, water purification, food reserves, arms and ammunition, some silver or gold for barter, and there's many other things that you can use for barter items. Buy yourself all the ammunition that you can afford to buy, because ammunition, I believe, in 10 years will be as good as gold. It will probably be even more valuable than gold itself. And if you live in a metro area, you should be planning at least 2 safe routes out of your city. Because once the economy collapses, you will know what's going on. They will cut the power nationwide. There'll be no TVs. There'll be no cell phones. There'll be no radios. There'll be no internet. There'll be no way to communicate. And that will create mass confusion. And that will give them their window of opportunity to put the clamps down on everybody. And they will be able to declare martial law. They will suspend the Constitution once we're disarmed. And that will be the end of freedom in the United States forever. And that's exactly what they have planned. And if you're still not believing it, ladies and gentlemen, research Operation Garden Plot and Operation Cable Splicer and the Rex 84 initiative signed by President Ronald Reagan in the early 1980s. The Rex 84 initiative divides the United States into 10 regions. There are some 700 FEMA facilities that I know of in the United States, and they're ready to receive prisoners once they begin their attempt to disarm the American people. And if you don't believe that, the POW command is located in Livonia, Michigan. And a sergeant some 20 years, 30 years ago said when a man was investigating what was going on, he stated quite clearly, quote, "The civil affairs group, the American people will be quite surprised when the civil affairs groups begin to run this nation," unquote. And what he was referring to is FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Their function, their total statutory function, is not to manage an emergency. Their statutory function is to take over the powers of government once an emergency is declared. That is their statutory authority. That is why they so are inept at responding to national disasters, because that is not their function. And FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security possesses now some over 1 billion rounds of ammunition, ladies and gentlemen. What are they going to do with 1 billion rounds of ammunition? They certainly aren't going to shoot pop bottles in their backyards on the weekends for fun. They ordered all this ammunition for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, because they are actively preparing for a confrontation with the American people, which I believe that could very well happen before the year 2013 ends. We are living in very dangerous and scary times, America. As I said before, which path do you want to go down? Peace and freedom, or war and slavery? I do not advocate war or violence. What I advocate is a restoration of our constitutional republic. I ask that my congressional representation hold true to their oaths to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. I'm not asking you to feed me or clothe me or house me or provide me with benefits, because I know that that is not a legitimate function of government. The only legitimate function of government is to preserve the rights of man. And anything other than that is destructive and detrimental to the well-being of its people. Arm yourselves not only with weapons, ladies and gentlemen, arm yourselves with the truth. Get these documents that I've mentioned on other broadcasts. Go to Scribed, search my ID, Silver Saberwolf, SABREWOLF, or friend me on Facebook, and I'll be glad to accept you, and I will give you access to the files that I have uploaded there. And I'm not saying I have all the documents, but I have a great many of them that provide conclusive proof as to what is happening in the world. If we do not band together to preserve our freedoms, the future of our children and our grandchildren will be ruined forever, and there will be a little precarious hope of them ever getting anything back. So this is what you must do, ladies and gentlemen. You must be proactive in your communities. And you must make every attempt to awaken your neighbors and your families. And that's about all the time we have for tonight. So good night, and we'll see you again.